welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I want to go through, as I promised, an overview on the 265 calibers I've just been shooting. The project started with a 3006, which was this basic Remington 700, which I then went through and put a different barrel in it, a new barrel in it, which was chambered for the 6506 Ackley Improved, which is this chamber, that case there, that round there. And then we had the opportunity, someone suggested they'd like to see some comparisons and do some testing with the other side of a very similar capacity bullet, the rest of it, the 6.5 caliber, similar amount of powder, but in a short fat round, which we've chose the 6.5 SAUM. It's actually a gap SAUM, so it's a slightly improved chamber in a short action ultra magnum in 6.5, which is that round next to it. So what we were essentially doing was testing between a short fat and a tall skinny with roughly the same powder. Now there's a few details that led to, and there's certainly some testing it led to, but in the simple side of it, the old school thought that the short fat, or the broader the chamber and the shorter the case, the more efficiency, the more power you're going to get out of it. Some people at least thought that was going to happen. Was right. That's what we ended up with. We ended up with the short fat one being more efficient in the way of the same amount of powder. You're actually getting more speed out of the bullet. I use the word efficient because I'm actually talking about amount of powder versus amount of power. Of course, there's lots of other things. Efficient is a very general word actually. And there is other things going on. I would still go, there are benefits and positives and negatives to both sides of it. But in the way of straight up making power, the short fat one, the SAUM, or like I said, the 6.5 gap, definitely for the same amount of powder, and I'll go through some other details there, but when I ran them both at, and in that case I was running them both at 60 grains of 225 or Rotumbo, whichever you want to call it, wherever you are in the world. In the 60 grains of that powder, I was pushing the Ackley Improve. I was pushing the 6506 to get to that place. That's the top end, probably a tiny bit past where it's comfortable. But I got them to both run at 60 grains, and at that level, the 6.5, or the SAUM, I should say, was running almost 200 feet per second faster. Now there's a couple of little hidden details inside there that would go with that, and one that they are both 26-inch barrels. This is the two rifles. So this one's running the long action in the Remington 700 in the action side of it. This one's running a short action, and we're using a bighorn action. There might be some differences. Ultimately, someone might be able to tell you there's some differences in accuracy in the action. Really, not that I would say there is. There's certainly a nicer action with that question. There's bits and pieces which I've been through with the bighorn, which is a very nice action, very nice to use. But the Remington 700 being a true action, there's really nothing in it besides that. It's just the closed bolt face behind the behind the round. So no real differences there. But because this is a long action versus a short action with the same length barrel, of course the chambering happens inside the barrel. That means that effectively the SAUM, being a short action, has 1 more inch of actual effective barrel. And the long action, there's more bored into it. The barrel is measured from the beginning of the thread, so it effectively has 1 inch shorter. So in that might be up to 50 inches, or sorry, 50 feet per second, 50, maybe even a little bit more feet per second of advantage that the longer barrel really suited in the SAUM. You'd have to test, you'd have to saw off 1 inch and then go and do your speeds again. But listen, they were 26 inch barrel, both of them, and that was what I saw, nearly 200 feet per second with exactly the same amount of powder. And the simple logic for that, in a very simple way to explain it, is that What I actually saw in that same exact amount of powder was a lot more pressure on the 6506 or the tall skinny one. There's a lot more pressure on that primer than what there was, and we could actually run more powder, although their water capacities are almost identical. So the actual fluid capacity or the actual capacity of the case is almost identical. We could actually run quite a bit more powder, up to 3 grains more is where I've been, and I'm getting to the level of where it's at its maximum. You could run more powder in the short, actually in the SAUM. So it can run even a lot more speed again, almost another 100 feet per second beyond that point. So very efficient on that side of things. But the logic would be that essentially the very narrow, or the narrow chamber, ends up with a traffic jam of the blast trying to get forward. So you could compare it with a 2-lane highway and a 4-lane highway. Even though they've both got to get out the same hole at the end of it, getting to that hole, the 2 lanes simply goes slower than the 4 lanes. And it's as simple as that. The traffic jam that's created in the 2-lane highway means that the explosion in front starts to affect the explosion behind, and it starts to jam up, so you get more pressure. Even though it's the same amount of powder, you get more pressure on your primer and the back end of the case that's wasting its energy stretching things down there rather than getting it all forward to where it pushes the bullet out. And the 4 lanes simply gets it all there faster. As to whether you go with the likes of the SS or the WSSM, so the super short magnums, as to whether there's another effect again on top of that, I don't know. I'd say there's a point where you don't gain any more, but I don't know, I haven't done that test. Certainly between these two there was that side of it. I would say there's other things, and it's not just about that. Accuracy wise, I really wouldn't pick anything in it from what I've seen. I haven't done full group training and that side of things to really find out where I'm getting in the groups on that, but I really would feel there's no differences there. You're going to come to where your rifle shoots well with what round it is and what powder it is and how much powder and all the rest of it is another conversation. I'm testing for their efficiency, so the power I'm getting out of the speed I can get them to do my ELR stuff. Both really great, both really nice. I would have to say the 6506 still has some real quality to it. Being able to, they feed very easily because they're small, because they're narrow, because they're essentially a longer 308. The way they ride through the case, the way they actually, through the magazine side of things, they're very easy to work with. The amount of 3006 rifles and things out there that you can actually work from to start off with, you know, there's lots of them, very popular. So I think it's a really good choice, and it shot really well. In the way of the negatives to the SAUM, the short fat one, they tend to have magazine feeding issues. They tend to be, it's a little bit harder to find the brass or that side of things, but it does have more power. So if you were to ask me which one's the best, I like them both. I wouldn't say there's a best. There's pluses and minuses. If you're after the most efficient bang, really I would go more in a single feed, the way I prefer to shoot. Then the 6.5 SAUM wins for me. I suppose there's another hidden detail I have inside there, is that the 3006 that this came from, I want to do some testing with it. So I have another barrel in the same 26 inches to do with the 3006, which I'll put this rifle back to, and I'll start doing some playing as a very popular cartridge all around the world. They are known in all sorts of forms. I haven't seen a lot of ELR shooting with them from what I know has actually happened. So I'd really like to push those boundaries and try to run some of the next test I'll be doing is in the 230 grains and 200 grains and things like that, with a 1 in 10 twist, 26 inch 3006 that will sit in this rifle and have a play. So for this moment, the 6506 is going to stop with us. Still got it there, got all that sort of stuff, great, and I think it's a really nice round, but this rifle is going to change over to, like I said, the 3006 and have a play. So in a nutshell side of it, the rifle, this one here, really happy. This is staying like this at the moment. We'll do some more testing. We obviously got out to 3,000 yards with the 6.5 SAUM, or the 6.5 gap SAUM. And shot really well, awesome caliber. And I'd say both of them, this has a bit more power, but both of them really shoot like a 308. You know, they don't have a lot more thump to them, they shoot very easily, and we really are moving into very effective and comparable with the 7mm Magnums and the 300 Win Mag and that sort of stuff in its actual trajectory and the distances I'm able to get to, we're in a very similar place. It's not quite up there, doesn't quite have that energy, but it's right on the that neck of the woods as energy versus efficiencies of bullet. So the last bit I'm really busting the try, and at the moment they get them, the moment I can shoot them, will be the 155 grain Burger in the Extreme Outer Limits Burger bullet. I'm really interested to see how this goes. We're running over 3,000 feet per second with the 150 grain Sierra Match King, but the Sierra Match King is not quite as finished as nicely in what I've seen, at least, or the bullets I'm getting aren't quite finished as consistency, both in their exact weight and the finish of their tip and things like that. Can do with a little bit of refining, but also the 155 grain Burger is running that little bit more ballistic, so in its ballistic coefficient is a little bit higher. And getting it probably coming back down to the 2900, 2950, maybe 3000. But with those figures, it's really going to be a comparable rifle to a proper Magnum, to the 7mm or the 300, and really probably goes into where we can stretch it in this sort of combination into the 3,000 meters, which is awesome. Also going to be very nice shooting, and I suppose that's the last bit I would say on that rifle. With both of these, probably going to the 140 grain Nozzler in the reduced drag factor bullets. They seem to be the most accurate and the most efficient that I've tested so far. And I would say even like above the Burger, I'm a big fan of my Burger bullets, but I would say both in the way it's shot, but also if you look at it, the fineness, the smallness of the me-plat, the consistency of the bullets, just another level of effort put into them. So that's where I'd be shooting, in the 1,000 to 2,000 yard sort of shots. That bullet's going to win in the longer stuff than going with a bigger, whether it's the Sierra Match King 150s or the Burger in the 155s, which is what I like to do, is where this is going to be going. So like I said, busting for those 155s, but can't get what you can't get. They're not in the country at the moment, so we're really waiting for those. The rest of this rifle and how it's set up, which I should go through and explain a little bit more. Well, actually, I'll take this one out of the road and put this one back into centre field. The rest of this rifle and how it's shot and how it's set up and how I've got it going, I'm super happy with. It's going really nicely. The scope's really working really well. I'll probably go through and talk more about it later on, but we've got it set up, and we've got it set up in a little bit of a cheat form, because it's zero is not zero on the 100 yard zero is not zero in the centre of the reticle. We're actually got zero up at 6mm on the top side of the reticle, and that's because what I've actually run is a 60 MOA base with 45 MOA rings. So I've got 105 minutes of cant in the setup here. I did that because I actually got a couple of these bases made up where I move things forward a little bit. They're nice and tall, so they work with everything, get everything in the right position. But this one I actually designed to set up with my with the Night Force and the Air Attack, so I could then, the 60 MOA is designed for the centre of the Night Force, being 120 minutes of elevation. And then the Air Attack lets me adjust up and down from that. So the Air Attack gives me another 70. So I can effectively set up my normal setup at least 190 minutes of elevation. With this one, it's 150 minutes, those are fixed rings, there's no other adjustment, but it actually is working really well. For my ELR shooting, it's set up really nicely, and I could dial into the just under actually, but almost 3,000 yards. So worked really nicely, scoped it really well. The fine reticle is probably the big advantage this thing has got over most first focal planes I've tried for this sort of stuff. There was a little negative I banged into it, which was when I tried to run more power up at 150 minutes, or the 45mm, 46mm, whatever it is, in the way of adjustment. Once I'm wound right up, then the lenses aren't working perfectly up there. So it's really, and that score back in the 15 power, still perfect, worked really nicely, nice clean reticle, and you're not looking for more definition back down in the 15 and 20 power. But when you're going up to the 25 and 30 power, I couldn't get it as clear as I wanted to. That's actually about the angle of the glass at the 150 mils. So really for high power, you're probably back down into where you're in the 120 minutes of elevation. 120 to 130 minutes of elevation is all you've really got to use in your high power settings. But for me personally, that's not a problem. I don't like winding up in high power very much at all. I'm much more a 15 power shooter. Even when I'm out at the 3,000 yards, I tend to be comfortable there. That's, you know, when I was shooting with the Night Force, where I could have zoomed in, I'm still back at the 16 or 15 power. That tends to be where I am. That's sort of a comfortable place to do everything, make everything work. You can see properly, and I tend to find nice accuracy at that place. More details in that conversation, but scope's working awesomely for what I've got set for what I wanted on that form, working really nicely. The action, really nice, really like it. I'm learning to control my pull so I'm not sort of flicking brass around the place or not getting it out. These are adjustable. When you actually pull the bolt back, that last bit of the stroke determines how the brass is going to come out. But yeah, it's really nice. I like it. Trigger, the MDT chassis, the whole thing is working really well and super nice to shoot. Anyway, that's my little spiel. 6506 versus this 65 SAUM. Definitely the SAUM wins in the horsepower race. Like I said, some other details involved with that. But yeah, both great rifles. Love them. Really nice pushing the 65 like this. And like I said, that other rifle is going to go to the 3006 next, and we'll have a bit of play with that. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Down below here, we've got a link to our web store where we have some of the specialised long-range shooting products that we actually produce. Check them out.
And for those of you who can, it'd be great to get some help. In our store we have support bits, and when you purchase those, the money goes direct to our channel and helps us bring these videos to you.
Thanks, guys.
See you next time.